That's exactly right. We have powered with Maxonomic, or partnered with them rather, to actually get the SPL going here this year. Go to needforseed.com. If you want your own Maxonomic chair, it's been what's given me my comfort to go through all these long SPL days. And you can also use code SMITEMAX when you're there. A little bit of extra on there alongside you if you want to do that. Now, welcome back into the SPL. That is powered by Alienware. We have partnered with them as well to hook up all the pro players and make sure they're getting into the action as well as they can. Go follow them over on social if you want to see what kind of stuff they've got going on. Maybe get into some giveaways, all kinds of other cool stuff that could be available there for you. Now, on this actual desk here itself, I'm joined by Ryan Aggro Bailey, who just got himself a whole new house. Now I'm just talking about Aggro's history. Married to a great person, all that cool stuff. I'm sure you
Sure.
went to high school, I bet. Used to work on the
I
Pirates.
did.
I'm just giving your IMDb at this point, Aggro. Welcome in, though. We've
And
got
you
a great
didn't
set
mention
here.
Mackenzie? What's that
That's
about,
right,
man?
yes, and a great dog. Can't believe I left out the most important
Thank you.
detail. We do have a big set here, though. Scarabs and Titans about to play. I know these teams maybe a little bit lower down in the standings, but I think at any given week, some momentum, a couple of wins strung together could really get these teams firing on all cylinders.
Very excited to see what these two teams are going to bring because, as you said, they both come out of the gates a little bit slower than they would have liked, and that really presents itself as an opportunity for, in particular, the Solar Scarabs, who everyone kind of expected to take a little bit more time in order to ramp up. I mean, this is the team that has the most rookies on it, the least competitive experience. They're sitting at fifth in the standings right now. If they could find a victory and go to 2-2, that would be huge for them. Whereas falling to 0-4 for the Tartarus Titans would be disastrous is too strong a word, but it would require some internal thought, I think, of what that team is doing and where they're going wrong. 0-3 through the first three games, certainly I'm sure they're already doing that, but to come in and drop against the Scarabs, the team that we think would take the most ramp-up time, I think would be telling about this team.
It would mean they'd have to start really thinking, as you said, about what they're going to be doing about this first phase if it becomes almost sort of a rebuild phase, maybe a little earlier to make that type of call. But 0-4 is hard to recover from at the start when the SPL is this competitive, when it's the Bolts that are up there at third, a team that I would have had more like sixth or fifth really coming into this if the Titans and Warriors had been as good as I would have thought alongside the Leviathans. I would have thought they'd have filled out the top four, but that's not been the case here at all. So let's take a little bit more of a look here at the Titans then in particular. Cyclone Spin, I think, gonna have to be a big key part of this team kind of turning things around. He has been a force as long as he's been in the SPL in whatever role he's in. Initially was solo lane, he dominated there. Now in the ADC role, they need him to find some of that old magic if they're gonna start turning things around.
Have to. And really, it's not just Cyclone Spin. I look at it as Cyclone Spin and Paul. Those two, the thing that I was worried about coming into this year was that those two historically have been team dominators in a good way. That you want to play around them so much because they're so good that they just win games by themselves, it feels like. So we're gonna draft around them, we're gonna team fight around them, we're gonna play the lanes around them. When you've got both of your backliners having that style, one has to take a little bit of a back seat. I don't think that either has really been dominant so far between Paul and Cyclone, and I don't think either has really taken that step back. They've both been kind of floating in this void. I want to see the Titans go in with a more cohesive game plan of we are giving the ball to Paul or we are giving the ball to Cyclone Spin, and then have the other, whoever doesn't have that proverbial ball, end up being the facilitator and help peel more in those team fights for that backliner. Gotta wait to see it still.
It's kind of like basketball, right? There's only one ball to go around. Can you really give it to
Yeah.
James Harden and Kevin Durant simultaneously? They found ways to make that work. Can this Titans team find, as you said, kind of the more fictitious ball, which is kind of the team's focus and who they play through, and find a way to split that around? They might have a good chance here up against the Scarabs. That's their opponent here in this set today. And some focus, I think, goes into Zapman. He sort of took on that role of the vet, of the leader, right, that's going to assemble all these young veteran pieces and get the most out of them. That's a tall task that's ahead of him, right, in Baronic, in Layers, who are coming into this team from the box and trying to really make their name here on PC. Does all that burden fall down to Zapman the way I said? I think it just does.
It kind of does. I agree. And for the most part, Zap has to change his role as well, because the role that I was just talking about, Cyclone maybe needing to adapt, is what Zap did really well the last 2 years, which is be willing to take the focus from the enemy team, peel for Paul, let him get the farm, all things like that. Zap did that very, very well in the past few years. Now I don't think that's his role. I think his role is to be the more star player, to be a little bit more selfish, to make the plays and try and be that playmaker for his squad, while simultaneously leading the rest of the team. So his adjustment and how he is going and what his role is going to be for this team is something that I'm interested in watching, not just today, but throughout the rest of the phase.
He was happy to be Ringo's star for the teams last year, but he's got to be, what, Paul McCartney this time around? I'm making an old school Beatles reference here at this point. That's fine. Everyone's going to super get that, all the kids that we've got here in the chat. I have Zapman, though, the actual guy that we are talking about here with us for the interview. And Zap, you heard the discussion that we were having about the role you're going to have on this team as kind of the veteran leader. Is that how you see yourself on this team? You've kind of got to be the one that gets all of these young pieces pointed in the right direction?
Yeah, definitely. I always see myself as that. Even 2 years ago when I worked with Sam and Paul, they were rookies, and Neil was on the 30 ALG team back in the day. So I've kind of been in that role for a while now, and I'm pretty comfortable in it. But it's kind of more the same this year with the Scarabs. It's kind of the same deal that I had 2 years ago.
Zap, a lot of players on the enemy team now you've teamed with. It's not just Paul and Scary, of course, but Aurora as well. How much does your experience with playing with those guys help you now that they're on a team kind of intermixed with one another?
I don't really think it helps too much. I feel like all the teams nowadays in the SPL's been, season 8 now. I think all the teams really know how to play SMITE well, and they know how to win. So I don't really think it's too much of an advantage. I think it's all about showing up on the day, executing your game plan, and playing well.
All right, with that, man, good luck in your match that's coming up here, man. Thanks for taking some time to talk to us, giving some insight into the inner workings of the Scarabs, and we'll go ahead and get moving on into the rest of this day. Aggro, you heard him say it, though. It's kind of business as usual for Zapman, the way that he sees it in terms of getting this team aligned correctly. Can he repeat that magic, though, that he had 2 years ago when he led that team to 2 Worlds wins in a row?
Yeah, that's the question, and obviously the answer is remaining to be seen. A large part of why that ended up working out so well is that Sam and Paul, those rookies that he was talking about, turned out to be some of the best talent we've ever seen at the entire SPL level. Can guys like Layers and Baronic end up bringing that same sort of talent to the table? We couldn't possibly say, saying we'll wait and see isn't a dig and saying, oh, we're not sure.
Right.
It's impossible to tell with this little sample size. So far, so good for those guys. I think they both looked pretty solid.
Well, hey, I think you've got a chance to buy low, sell high on some Baronic and Layers gear. Go ahead and check out Inside Apparel, who hooked us up with the jerseys this year. If you want to get in on the Scarabs, and maybe before they blow up the way that Sam and Paul did later on, you can say you got a Baronic or Layers original back when those guys were just starting out. That is shop.smiteproleague.com. And maybe you could be the guy that believed in these guys a little bit ahead of everybody else. I think, though, I don't know if Zap and the boys would agree, but I think these two teams have a very different view on a very similar record here, right? Aggro 1-3 for the Scarabs, 0-3, or 1-2, I'm sorry, for the Scarabs, and 0 and then 3 then for the Titans, right? The Titans, I think, were expecting to come in and be a super team, but the Scarabs said, hey, we're trying to get these new guys accustomed to the SPL. Maybe we're not going to win right out of the gate. Yeah,
I think that talking to Zap before the season, he was very much on we're not super worried about our record phase 1. We're going to try and focus on improving. We're going to get some wins. He wasn't feeling like they were going to go winless or anything like that. He was expecting to be successful for sure, but also understanding that this sort of process takes some time. I don't know if Zap feels like they're ahead of schedule or not, but I can tell you that on the other side, the Titans certainly feel like they're behind schedule on where they expected to be.
Yes, I think so, but this team just has way too much raw talent. This is the kind of team that I think could legitimately stumble into a dub at some point, right? I don't think they're going to do a whole lot of that. This team is going to be orchestrating their wins, but when you're starting off with Benji, Scary, Paul, Aurora, and Cyclone Spin, that is generally, you know how sometimes you just have good enough ingredients that it doesn't matter if you're a good cook or not, you're making something good. I think that is what could happen with this roster. It's just going to depend, though, on how quickly Scary D can acclimate to the jungle and how quick he can get ready to it in Season 8 when these junglers have to be so elite in not just their mechanical skill, but their decision-making, their top-level view in how they want to attack this map and their opponent kind of right from the beginning.
Finch, you stumbled into one of my favorite YouTube video series, which is where the professional chef gives the amateur chef really good ingredients, and the professional chef gets the amateur chef's crappy ingredients. and has to try and make those work. Now, obviously, crappy ingredients is far too far, but Zap is the professional chef trying to bring together with less experience, and then the professional chef is, on the other side with the professional ingredients. I think that's very funny, and I love those videos. But I think you're right to point out that that's kind of the similar style here for the Titans. They've just got too much good stuff in order to continue to struggle. Eventually, they're going to find their footing, I'm sure of it.
I think that it wouldn't make sense to count this Titans team out for too long, even if maybe we don't see it even for a couple more weeks before they're really there. Aurora, though, the man you're seeing on the screen right now in the fresh jersey for the Titans that you might want to grab one of your own of, I don't think that guy is going to let this team struggle too much longer. He has been here before. Remember his first year with Fat Chunks Assemble going like 7 years into the past? That team wasn't great initially, but they found their own unique ways to approach the map. Eventually, him and DJ, when they were together, would just move on to the other side of the map, invade. They get off to all kind of crazy starts, so I don't think it's going to be too long. Let's catch up, though, on where the picks and bans are. Athena, Sobek, Yamoja, all three Guardian bans for the Scarabs, Ymir, Giannis, and Anher. No big surprises there, but Tiamat gets to go first overall, and they follow up with Guan Yu, two very strong picks right out of the gate.
I mean, Baronic already getting some respect on his Giannis play, gets that banned away, and with the Anher banned away right away, Scarab's going to make sure they get the next priority hunter, which is, of course, that Heimdall. Little surprised to see Paul get his hands on Tiamat. I'm interested in how that pick is going to work for him, because we saw Hurry play it in game 1 of their set earlier on up again for the Jade Dragons. I think that the big thing with Tiamat is that she has to get involved. She has to be willing to jump in and bait herself. And Paul, normally I don't think of him in that sort of play style. He's much more conservative, wants to play on the outskirts of the team fights. But for the same reasons that I'm always surprised at how good his Hebo is and how he is the premier Hebo player in the league. Hebo's kind of that same style that feels like it shouldn't fit with Paul's play style, but he's very good at it. I wonder if Tiamat's going to be much of the same. I wouldn't be surprised if Paul comes out and absolutely dominates on this pick.
That's right. Hebo's about finding those moments to all in, and Tiamat's got to do the same thing. So it's Sun Wukong and Kabrakan. I think Wukong makes a ton of sense. He's been kind of at the top of people's solo lane charts recently, getting nearly permabanned this last week or so, but makes it through into the hands of one of the best that we've had in the solo lane over the last 5 years in Benji. That is frightening that he gets this pick, which is both so safe and so capable of all-in committing. And then Kabrakan, though, in the support role for Aurora. This is something Aurora certainly plays. Is this a maybe lock in a mobile god like Heimdall, who's so reliant on the Bifrost? Even Guan Yu, he doesn't have a leap. He's got a dash and a horse, right? He's going to get locked in by those walls, too.
It's actually pretty easy to peel a Guan Yu with Kabrakan in the team fighting phase, because a lot of times he's going to try and run through a corridor with that horse onto your backliners, and you can just wall him off, and you've saved your backline a ton of HP and relic usage at the same time. Plus, his damage goes off through Talu Assault. You've got multiple stuns to stop it. I like that matchup for Aurora. I think it's more about getting him a pick before the next ban phase. The Scarabs clearly putting a lot of respect on him. All 3 bans go his way. So you want to make sure that he gets something that he's comfortable on. Hercules is obviously the pick that came to my mind instantly as the one for him that's left open. But he's loved this Kabrakan pick for a long time. It gives you a ton of early wave pressure, especially level 1. I like the pick here for him. It does give the Scarabs an opportunity to pick around that Kabrakan wall a little bit better, but I don't think that's a huge deal.
I do think they've already got what they want in terms of the Guan Yu and Heimdall likely already, so maybe, like you said, they're not so bummed out about it, but certainly the Scarabs can now pick a jungler, maybe with some leap or something like that has a little bit of an easier time getting away from Kabrakan. We still need, though, the backline for Titans in terms of their ADC. Heimdall already selected, Chernobog, Jingwei, Anher, all banned out at this point. I mean, you don't feel like you're scraping the bottom of the barrel taking Apollo here at this point, but his stock does seem to have dropped at this point, so maybe they won't go that way.
Yeah, Cyclone has, in his career, gone to a lot of different types of hunters. Wouldn't be too surprised to see him pull out something a little bit weird here. We saw the Kernanos on a Zapman highlight. You could go with something in that direction. Just wonder what the best matchup is up against the Heimdall. We saw Cupid be played by Panda Cat whenever Anher was banned and Heimdall was selected. The Cupid wouldn't look that bad up against what the other side has. But the Ho Yi instead, A little bit risky up against Kuzenbo because Kuzenbo loves that fire and forget type of damage, the ones that you can't stop, like Sunbreaker, Hou-Yi's ultimate. But with crit in the meta, Hou-Yi can only get crit once in a period of time, and then he can't be crit anymore. I like the pick in the meta right now. I think it's pretty solid.
But I think that this is the best thing, this 10th pick. When you see someone like Hou-Yi with no CC immunity get picked, and you haven't picked your jungler, Dodgy or someone of the like feels like a great selection, right? Put big pressure on his beads with constant powwows, trying to put pressure there and not making life easy for Cyclone.
Or not making life easy for Cyclone Spin or Scary D or Aurora. And because that's
right.
3 characters with no CC immunity. Tiamat is slow to get into her CC immunity, so you can end up pulling her sometimes. I really think that this Dodgy pick is good. Dodgy must have been popping in scrims this week because we've seen 2 picks of it for multiple different teams. Some team that isn't the Titans or the Dragons was dominating both the Scarabs and the Leviathans with Dodgy. That's my prediction because that's usually how that happens. I think it's good again, but I think it faces the same problems that it did whenever Panatom locked it in last time. As soon as level 12 hits and upgraded shells start hitting the map, this Dodgy pick loses a lot of value. Her dive potential is risky sometimes. Guan Yu faced that same problem come late game that he just gets torn to shreds. I'm a little bit worried about the Solar Scarabs composition, but if they get ahead, I think they could really, really stomp with what they have.
And the shells are scary, but remember, part of the problem was when Dodgy would dive, there was such instant response from that on her with the impale, that get off me moment. Both Hou-Yi and Nemesis's kind of moments are a little slower in that response. Maybe that does give Dodgy some answer, but if Aurora is there, one of his 2 stuns, I imagine, comes out pretty quickly, right? And that does buy them at least a little bit more time than maybe the on her would have inherently had in the kit. This is an interesting one. Another Merlin pick, which we saw struggle in terms of confirmation, but up against Tiamat, who also has not been great at the confirmation. Is there a team you favor maybe in the burn category then, if these aren't particularly great of confirmed mages?
DPS is pretty close between the 2. I think Scarabs is a little bit better because Guan Yu Prot Shred is very good on those objectives, but Hou-Yi DPS with the ultimate going all in is really strong. I think they're pretty close. I do think that even though I think the Scarabs composition is much better if they get ahead, if we get to hyper late game, I do think their composition might be a little bit better. That they might scale better in the long term, but there is a significant window, 20 to 35 minutes in the game, maybe even 15 to 35 minutes in the game, where I think the Titans composition comes together a little bit better. So I'm looking for the Titans to try and weather the storm a little bit early on, maybe get some pressure in duo with this Kabrak and Hou-Yi, which has solid kill potential. And then they've got to kind of wait it out until they get those relics up. Then they have their window to attack.
These are 2 teams, though, that both could really use a set victory here. You can kind of feel that tension in the air between both of these squads trying to get some kind of momentum going. So whoever comes out of this one, I think, going to be feeling really, really good afterwards. Game number 1, though, Titans and Scarabs in what feels like a must-win set. Let's get into it.
That's right. It's Dolson, Mifflin, and Doug working the game for you here. The Tartarus Titans versus the Solar Scarabs. The Death set it up pretty perfectly there. 2 teams needing to get some wins, getting some momentum going here. And Mifflin, in a set that's this important, I want to look towards mid. Paul versus Veronica, I think, is going to be a very pivotal matchup here between these 2 teams. Paul gets the Tiamat for himself, and Veronica on the Merlin that's apparently starting to get a little more popular.
It's a pick that Baronik has a lot of experience playing back from his SCL days. Got a lot of experience lining up against the young man on the Battleground of Gods on that exact pick. But I think that Paul on this Tiamat kind of puts the game on a timer a little bit. Aggro alluded to it last week and on the desk that Tiamat takes a lot of time to get her feet under her, but once she does, is incredibly strong.
Whoa.
But it doesn't necessarily fit Paul's play style as a Roar. Looking for an invade?
And Roar has horrific emblem as well. Blink on in, emblem dropped.
Toxic.
SOT on his blue buff, picks it up under the body, blocks
So
it up. They look
toxic.
like they that just sucks. That sucks, man. SOT can't do anything about it. He drops his blue buff. Not do we know the Titans steal it away anyway. And SOT 0 for 1, 40 seconds in to game 1.
That is a gimmicky start right there. Aurora backs immediately, picks up level 2 of his boots, but that's how it worked out. It wasn't even necessarily the body block. Tremors into the Master's Will slow. When you don't have boots yourself, you're kind of just stuck there, man. SOT played it about as well as he could. Held W key, just was not moving. Unfortunate. And meanwhile, the Scarabs not quite able to do anything on the opposite side of the map. That is a clean win for the Titans in the early.
Well, you always like to say it, and the point stands. You know, one kill does not make for a lead. It's about what Benji can now do on this Sun Wukong as the lane goes on. With that extra blue buff XP, with the assist XP, Bluestone in his back pocket, something we'll have to keep our eyes on. Guan Yu has the sustain to stay in that lane once he gets tanky enough. So maybe some return pressure from the Tartarus Titans is necessary there, because SOT used his blink there as well. But then you have to wonder, Myth, alright, so does this set us behind anywhere else? Well, Aurora was able to get on over. Cyclone Spin picked up his purple buff nonetheless. Maybe a little bit of XP discrepancy over there in the duo lane, but it seems like a good call all in all from the Titans.
I think if there's any XP discrepancy in the duo lane, it's that Cyclone Spin is going to be ahead of Zapman, having not had to split his waves at all. That is a tough start to deal with. If anything, maybe Aurora's about a half level down, but with supports, you don't really care about a half level too much. It's really only about level 5 for supports, and then level 12 once they get that second relic, and then after that, they can stop soaking up my experience for all I'm concerned. SOT now, a full level down, and is likely going to be left isolated over here. Layers does not have a great matchup into Benji. It doesn't really have the potential to pull him in, and Benji incredibly safe on this Sun Wukong.
Aurora, one of the supports in the league, hoping to get things going. As far as top deaths in the league right now, Rafford, Numa, and then Aurora in that order. So Aurora hoping to turn around some of those early season woes. Off to a great start here on this Kabrakan. You want to get in, you want to get aggressive, Myth, but he started it with the horrific emblem. You imagine maybe a blink later on could make some sense here for this pick. How does the pace and maybe the face of the game change with the horrific emblem? Something don't always see on these support picks.
Yeah, horrific is an item that you have to utilize throughout the early because it gets immediately countered out by Heavenly Wings. If anyone on the side of Scarabs picks that up, that slow immunity comes through, cleanses the slow, and makes you faster. So horrific is saying, alright, I'm trying to get involved early on, and I have to do it consistently before my opposition hits level 12. So keep your eyes on Aurora. It's very likely that he tries to keep himself aggressive.
That's right, lurking over here by the duo lane now. Inbound, starting to rotate through, working on the oracles. Gonna walk right up towards Zapman here, but Zapman's level 5 and has beads. That tends to be the area where this Heimdall becomes so difficult to kill off. Layers over here on the duo side of the map as well. Cyclone Spin, a chance to escape if need be. Aurora pushed back right into the breaking stun, or a few of the Solar Scarabs. Big ultimate connects from Zapman. Can Cyclone Spin do enough damage to slow down the kill? Emblem drops, but so does Aurora. The Solar Scarabs have answered back. It's a leap in from Cyclone Spin, and that's because Scary D lurking off to the right-hand side. Scary D gets the kill, but it's a double from Layers. Pushed on back as inbound might end up falling here to Scary D. A double for Scary D out of the jungle. 2-for-2 trade.
Zapman sticking around, maybe too long. Paul's behind you, bud. Gotta teleport out quickly. Is gonna be able to ride the Bifrost and make himself scarce. That is a tough situation for Cyclone Spin, who jumps in just a little bit too early. Could have played around the edge a little bit longer, but maybe he thinks to himself, gotta jump in, gotta make it a tasty fight for the Scarabs so they stick around, and does net his nemesis a double kill and a 1-level lead inside the jungle, but falling down as the ADC, that's a little bit tough. It's gonna largely equalize that XP lead that he was afforded by the start from Aurora.
That's right, couple assists though for both of the Hunters. That feels okay. Both Hunters starting to work on stacking up that Devourer's Gauntlet, so XP may be the big differentiator in the lane here at the moment. You were right though, Myth. Look, Aurora wants to stay aggressive, and Paul, I believe, able to get off a red buff invade. That means Aurora's going to pick up the Tartarus Titans' own red buff here, so a small window for maybe a little extra burst damage from Aurora on this Kabrakan pick. Veronica on the Merlin here this game, it's kind of an interesting play style, because you have that flicker, but it's not this massive gap closer or gap extender. I mean, it sends you a decent bit in one way or the other. But if Scary D, Cyclone Spin, maybe even Aurora, if he gets Blink later on, wants to get on to that Merlin, you know, the flicker won't save your life entirely.
No, it won't. That's such an easy tool to burn away. But for now, I think that the Scarabs' entire strategy would be to slow down this game, alright? We don't want to play into the strongest point of this Titans draft. Don't want to play into this horrific emblem throughout the early, which is coming up in 15 seconds, by the way. I think that timer, horrific emblems timer that is going to be synonymous with the engage timer for the Tartarus Titans. They should be going almost always as long as it's up, especially considering how many blinks are on the side of the Scarabs. No CC immunity afforded by those beads. Only 2 targets. Picking that one up means that Aurora really can't go wrong with whoever he goes on.
Wow, look at this. It's a 2v1 there. That Cyclone Spin still able to come out ahead of Zapman half HP, inbound just above it. Not a fight I think the Solar Scarabs thought that they were going to be behind on here. Inbound going for the Teleria boots, so maybe a little less tanky than he had expected to start off this game. Paul looks like Rod of Tahuti will be that first item here out of the mid lane. Baronic going for something in the penetration tree. Spear of Desolation tends to be a pretty popular start here for the Merlin if you go into that cooldown as well. But now more brewing over here on the left side of the map. Zapman slowed and ulted by Scary D. There's a knock-up and a knock-back, and that's going to keep himself alive for the time being. Layers collapsing in. First pal-outs of the game. One connects onto Scary D, and there's no beads for the Nemesis and no chance to stay alive. But now it's Paul rotating over from mid, but Baronic has done the same. The Merlin's in the backline, has to flicker away, but it's only as far as the walls from Aurora. Somehow SOT survives on the right-hand side of the map, and it's a 1 pick for none. Solar Scarabs ahead.
SOT almost got caught out on a lazy back on that right-hand side. Good play by the Scarabs to disengage out of there. The peel for Zapman was so strong, but Benji able to do something on the solo. Not only gets the better end of the 1v1, but also invades the blue buff all on his own. Due in large part, again, to the massive lead afforded to him by the start from the Titans. Still benefiting from a 2-level lead, and that's only going to continue to grow unless someone from the Scarabs decides to head over there and bail him out. But it seems like both teams have been putting a pretty large emphasis on the dual lane so far.
Well, I mean, you can see what the thought is from the Titans, right? I mean, you have 2 decisions. It's either keep putting pressure on SOT, see how far behind we can get him, or accept the fact that Benji's in an okay spot now. He's a level ahead, level and a half. Maybe he was 2 levels ahead just a second ago before SOT ticked over to 8. And accept that he's far enough ahead to push that lead on his own. Let's see if we can get some other side of the map involved. And the Solar Scarabs probably don't feel super comfortable engaging on the Sun Wukong just yet. So there's plenty of brawling happening on the left side. Inbound shallow on the left side of the Tartarus Titan side of the jungle. Just going to place out some wards. We will return to a state of farming. Tartarus Titans, though, Myth, they built themselves up at a 1.3k gold lead just through some good fighting. Solar Scarabs going to close that gap up a little bit as that Greater Scorpion will go over to the Scarabs.
It will, but so far the Scarabs have had a decent amount of dual lane pressure. Or not the Scarabs, the Titans rather, able to fight in Cyclone Spin, stripping away beads in 2v1 situations pretty consistently so far. So I'm surprised to see the Scarabs willing to spawn up that gold free as Benji, making his presence known everywhere on the map. Layers now putting on point, dropped down to about half HP by the combo, and Paul a lot of free farm in mid. This pace is going to benefit the Titans, I believe, because their late game prowess is going to be so good. Nemesis scales incredibly well, Tiamat scales incredibly well, and they've got great CC lockdown between Kabrakan and Sun Wukong. I want to see the Scarabs bring the fight a little bit earlier on, utilize this Kuzenbo and this Daji before the Titans are able to get all the CC immunity in the world.
Well, Scarabs have 3 blinks in their active pool, and they got a Gold Fury pull. Cyclone Spin, a chance to steal away, but no, he doesn't have his ultimate. He's going to have to get it done with the auto attack. The ultimate comes up just after the Fury. What is that damage? Onto Inbound, who has to blink away, and Layers has to escape as well. The Tartarus Titans a bit slow on the collapse, and the Scarabs get a big early objective.
That's a Zapman call through and through. Gonna set him up to Niflheim just to confirm the purple buff, and then immediately disengaged. Intelligent play from the veteran ADC player from the Solar Scarabs. Now, Gold Fury goes the way of the Scarabs, confirms their own bus, and then returns back to farming, effectively removing that neutral objective from the map. But despite all of these small wins for the Scarabs, it's still about a 1,000 gold lead in favor of the Titans. Off of, again, that's still just the start from Aurora inside of Soul Lane. That's all on Benji, who has not been quite able to rotate out and have his pressure known completely. If he does start to work his way into mid, I think that the Scarabs are going to be in some trouble.
It does feel that way. Baronic did end up going into the Spear of Desolation, so a little extra cooldown, a little extra flat penetration early on in this game. Paul Could have been Rana Tahuti, but instead goes for the power boots, so you need a little CDR Chronos pendant here on this Tiamat. And that's been one of the big things here, Miff, when talking about this Tiamat pick is, you know, the minions can split push. That's an important note. It's changed the face of a few of the games that Tiamat has been in, but we've also seen Tiamat absolutely chunk out damage into the mid to the late game. We saw, what, an SEC game where Tiamat ended with like 40-something thousand damage or something disgusting like that. So, you know, Paul on this pick, I think is going to be pretty interesting to watch as this game goes on, how that build starts to build up, how much damage he's able to get off versus how much emphasis you want to put on split pushing, things like that. We're starting to see Tiamat kind of rise back up after what was a few losses to start off her SPL debut.
Yeah, tumultuous start for the new god, but worth noting that SCC game did go pretty late, which hasn't been the standard for the SPL so far. It was about 40-some-odd minutes for them to get all that damage rolling through, whereas the majority of these matches so far this year have been going 28, 35 minutes max inside the SPL. Tiamat certainly going to benefit from a longer-paced game. And take a peek at the slash lines across the board. It seems like both teams very willing to ignore the center of the map. Goose eggs for both mid laners, 0-0-0 kills, death, and assists, but only one of them is really benefiting from it. Paul, so far, pulling slightly ahead in the build because he decides to go for a cheaper path. Chronos Pendant in that first slot, and then what I'm going to assume is going to be a Soul Gem in the third slot, whereas Baronic going for a much more standard build with Sphere of the Desolation, and then likely a Rada Tahuti.
That's right, pretty bursty for Paul right off the bat once that Soul Gem gets taken in. It would be goose eggs for the solo laners as well, had that minute zero gank. Look, cringe gank, we're not getting into that conversation. We need a new name for whatever it means when a support just walks into your blue buff when you're trying to do it at yeah, uber cringe gank there from Aurora. Otherwise the solo laners wouldn't have seen much action like Paul is seeing now. Look at the dive onto this Tiamat. Some damage return. Palal's used as well. Aurora going the opposite way. And Paul, I don't know, Miff, there's no chance. Dead to rights the moment you see that many Scarabs walking towards him.
I don't know, man. Aurora can literally assemble walls, like throw one up, try and help your man out a little bit. Paul, who used to have goose eggs, now 0-1 to a 4-man dive from the Solar Scarabs, and now the Tartarus Titans are engaging?
And they're engaging onto Inbound, who evaporates under the damage of the Tartarus Titans. And Nemesis ultimate tends to do that to you as well as Aurora closing that gap. So able to get back some pressure, but it's Paul who dies in exchange for Inbound on the other side, a mid for support. Scarabs probably feeling okay with that engage. And Miff, you had to get both actives off of Paul, or Paul had to use both of his actives in that engagement as well. So for the next 2 minutes or so, this Tiamat could get engaged upon yet again.
Could be, but mid for support trade. I'm pretty sure the Scarabs are pretty alright with it. Pyromancer does swing it back in the Titans' favor. Blue buff invade does not succeed this time around. I believe SOT able to secure that one for himself. And now the support, who's playing a little bit selfish so far, is starting to benefit from it. 2-level lead for Aurora over Inbound inside of this Kuzenbo. And Kuzenbo is a god that needs to get some levels behind him. Doesn't matter if you can reflect damage if you die instantly. Inbound gonna need to spend some time in the hyperbolic time chamber just farming up.
Yeah, Aurora's been rotating around, has the 1 kill but 2 less assists. So Inbound just hasn't been able to do as much of this. The neutral farm stealing away that Aurora has been able to do. Haven't seen all that much Kuzenbo. Sovereignty, first item. Plenty of physical damage that the Tartarus Titans look to get rid of as this game goes on. It's quieted down a little bit over on the duo side. There was constant fighting what seemed like the first few minutes of this game, but now Cyclone Spin and Zapman have been able to take a breather, farm up. Builds looking somewhat similar to standard here. Just swap the Executioners and the Wind Demons on one side or the other. But we already got a glimpse, Miff, earlier on at what type of damage this Hou Yi can do. You drop the suns on the enemy team, you hit a stun, you mark them up, and you'll be able to shred through some targets like any other hunter once that build starts to get rolling.
And he's one of the best hunters in the game for taking out tanky targets. That Mark of the Golden Crow gives you additional damage based on how much HP remaining on the target itself. So if Inbound's down to 20%, I mean, you could very easily crit in the quadruple digit range. And he is building into crit, by the way. Execution already finished up, and now working his way into a Wind Demon, where Zapman going the reverse path, Wind Demon first, and now working to Executioner himself. So objectives should favor the Solar Scarabs insofar as burn, because Zatman has that crit available to him. So keep your eyes on the Chaos team. Wouldn't be too surprised if we see them start to group up around the Gold Fury.
Veronic goes Soul Gem after. Wondered if it would be a Rod of Tahuti. Instead, it's double Soul Gems, one for each mid laner, and a Chronos Pendant, Spear of Desolation as the cooldown items, respectively. Oni Fury started up by the Tartarus Titans. This time, the Solar Scarabs looking to close that gap. Inbound sends the Nene cap in, and the Tartarus Titans take the Oni Fury away. No real answer from the Solar Scarabs, but the fight after might make a big difference here. Paul gets out of the powerhouse here, and Layers alone on the back line. The Tartarus Titans get the Fury, and they get a free pick on the end.
Both of these teams want to cut their losses at any given moment. Layers left high and dry. Now Zatman in the exact same position. Does regroup with inbound, but Benji on the chase. Watery Grave expended.
Man, they want Zatman.
Is he still going? No way!
They want Zatman. They're desperate to get this kill. Now inbound pushes Scary D off to the side, and the Nemesis has to use beads. All 5 of the Tartarus Titans between a still standing, by the way, Tier 1 and Tier 2 tower. So no damage onto the tower at the end of it. There are Oni minions pushing in here to the left. But it looks like that's all the Titans were searching for. Maybe try to squeeze out one more pick from that fight. Not worried about the tower just yet.
I can't believe they're willing to dive that hard for Zatman. You said desperate, and you are right. They got to believe that Jenny from the block is used to dealing with that one. Zatman is a streamer too, by the way. Very used to getting dove out like that. Tartarus Titans expend a lot of their resources there. Scary D using both relics and not quite able to secure the kill. Could slow down the pace of this game for the near future, but now 3,000 gold in the lead. I think the Tartarus Titans are in a good position. Once this Pyromancer starts to respawn, expect them to be there in numbers.
That's right. Layers didn't really get a chance to get any of his damage off in that previous fight. That was some of the concern with the Daji. I mean, you're able to get up, pull some in, but look at the state of the beads after that fight. Only Scary D had to use his, and it was totally unrelated to inbound. Totally unrelated, excuse me, to Layers. It was because of inbound trying to push Scary D beneath that Phoenix. So you haven't seen the beads burn just yet from the Solar Scarabs. That might give Layers a chance for big ultimates in these team fights. We'll return back to a state of farming here. Veronic has reached level 17, kept pace with Paul on this Tiamat. Now Layers looking for an engage on a Scary D. He's got one chain onto the Nemesis who doesn't have beads, but the ultimate back onto Layers, and the damage from the Daji is enough to get it done this time. Aurora, no follow-up here. Benji cannot make his way around SOT, and it's a clean pick over to the Solar Scarabs jungler.
It is. Aurora tries to finish off that kill onto Layers. Couldn't quite do it. Nice little backstep there. Keeps the Daji alive. Scary D falls down, but that makes sense. No actives available. Should have them back up by the time he's able to respawn, and still should be able to defend the Pyromancer as well. Tartarus Titans now primed for a good push in, but it's going to be a return back to neutral for now. Cyclone Spin, not quite willing to rotate out just yet. Wants to get a couple more levels under his belt.
Sure does, and that's as we're talking about it, the first example of Layers being able to chunk out some damage. The junglers have been heavily looked at in these fights. Junglers plus inbound, the only players in this game with a couple of deaths under their belt. Still some pressure here from the Scarabs on their own blue buff, as Benji still feels confident enough in a 2v1, attempts to steal it away, but SOT will grab that one. First couple of towers in the game to go down, Mifflin. It's the Tier 1 over in left, Tier 1 over in right, both against the Solar Scarabs, so that extra little bit of gold trickling over towards the Titans has built this lead up to about 3,000. That's a quiet 3,000 gold lead.
It is, and it's given them a lot of space to work with Tier 1 towers going down on both side lanes. Means that it's going to really limit where the Solar Scarabs are able to retreat to if they do start to lose out on these team fights inside the jungle. Inbound, thinking about working his way into mid, looks around, sees just enemies, and decides better of it. I like this pace so far. Tartarus Titans maintaining this slower, methodical pace, waiting for that 20-25 minute mark where Paul is really going to start swinging. Picks up the Karen's coin in that 4th slot. A little bit of additional penetration should be very useful, especially considering with inbound being so far behind, doesn't really have the magic defense to deal with it.
Layers is down low here, and look at the dive in from Paul. We said that is what the Tiamat needs to do, and then Aurora tries to engage as well, so now the ultimate offline for the Cabrakan could be influential. Looks like the Scarabs want to stick around by this Tier 1 tower, but Layers inbound both go back to base, and the Tier 1 tower will be forfeit outside of just a little poke. So now only Tier 2 towers remain for this Solar Scarabs team. There's not much you can do there, Miff. Inbound had to leave. Looks like Zapman had to leave as well. You just try to poke out some health from the Titans and not try to fight 5v3.
That's pretty crazy that the Titans were able to use their ultimates, not secure any kills, and then just walk straight to the Pyromancer and pick it up with zero opposition from the Solar Scarabs. The Titans are dictating the pace of this map just by grouping up as 5 and walking around as 5, whereas the Scarabs are kind of playing this catch-up game, trying to predict where the Titans are going to go. Should be pretty easy to predict this time around. Gold Fury spawns up, and we see a 4-man grouping over here, but just a little bit of face shown by Inbound is going to be enough to scare the Titans back this time around. Good play from the support to make sure this neutral objective doesn't go down, but the Scarabs are going to need to make a much more concentrated effort to put up a defense around these neutral objectives.
Well, it's Benji and Zapman, the first 2 in the game to hit level 20, so Zapman grabs that upgraded starter item, and then Benji, once he's able to afford, have to imagine Bluestone Brooch or finish off whatever he's going for there towards the end of his build. Solar Scarabs start up the Primal Fury here. This would go a long way, closing the 4,000 gold lead that is now built up. Paul, little bursts from the Soul Gem reminds the Solar Scarabs who is in the lead in this game, and continued pull on the objective, and now finished off. Thanks, Solar Scarabs, say the Tartarus Titans. Another Fury over to the blue side.
And as a consolation prize, the Scarabs able to at least pick up a tier 1 tower. Yeah, not a great trade. 5,000 gold now in favor of the Tartarus Titans, who have essentially been allowed to do whatever they want inside of these objectives. This time around, at least the Scarabs show face, but only to hand it over.
SOT gets stunned by Aurora, but good trigger discipline there from Scary D not to drop the ultimate, and Aurora not to drop the walls. Zapman, the 1 level, well, what was a 1 level lead over Cyclone Spin, was able to knock down the tier 1 tower and left. So the tower's right back to even outside of the mid lane tower that still stands here for the Tartarus Titans. Scaling still being done. We were concerned, as you and Aggro have pointed out, Mifflin, about that kind of 15 to maybe even 30-minute mark where this Titans team feels really good. You have to consider this Heimdall. If the uptime on this now level 20 near full build Heimdall, top net worth in the game by about 1,000 over his counterpart in Cyclone Spin. We know at this point ad nauseum we've talked about what this build can do on Heimdall. It's all about finding that uptime.
It sure is. Benji getting aggressive inside the Soul lane. 1 versus 2 and making it 2 versus 2. Aurora's in there. Up into the Powwow goes Layers, maybe able to escape.
He is able to escape this time, but for how long? Scary D, Blink, all exchange with Layers. Zapman's there to save the day. Beautiful juggling by the Solar Scarabs, and Scary D falls for his efforts. Now it's the Solar Scarabs on the chase. Aurora with the stun onto SOT. Around the left side comes Inbound. Benji with some range damage there being deflected back. Aurora's going to get caught out here. Paul providing plenty of damage from the Tiamat out of mid. They haven't been able to finish off the kill just yet, but SOT thanks them. Solar Scarabs find a quick 2.
They do, and the chase is not over quite yet. If Tartarus Titans stick around a little bit too long, they could. The Scarabs, that is, keep working into the jungle instead. It's going to be a peel back. We're looking at the most important neutral objective on the map. Fire Giant pulled out and already down to 90, 80%. 4 people stacked up. Titans on the defense.
No Aurora or Scary D here for this fight. Layers first on in, but look at the kiting backwards. Paul jumps in. Paul finds Layers. Big opening pick now for the Tartarus Titans. The Fire Giant, maybe an afterthought. The Solar Scarabs continue to chase him. Oh, Paul! Wow, what a play! He finds Zapman with the big damage on the backside, just shy of the double. Big damage from the Tartarus Titans. Benji cleans up that kill. That's a numbers advantage gone by the wayside for the Scarabs.
Let that be a lesson. Nobody steps up into Paul's jungle. Essentially turns that fight on his own. Finds the solo pick and then the double knockup to completely change it up. What was a Fire Giant push for the Scarabs is immediately sold away. Now the Titans have their eyes on the most important neutral objective, and they take it. 5 stack with Fire Giant and 3 tier 2 towers left on the map. This gold lead is about to swing even further in the Order team's favor.
Look, the Solar Scarabs, they found a couple of picks there, Mifflin. Maybe a touch of an overextend there towards the end. Aggro mentioned this on the desk. Finch did too. If you're playing this pick, you're playing this Tiamat, you got to be ready to jump in. You got to be ready to get aggressive. We didn't know how Paul would look, and we've now seen that Paul is A-OK, finding his way in a numbers disadvantage, finding his way into big damage, double knockup there, and massive damage from the Tiamat. 2,600 gold in hand. That'll all but finalize the full item build here for Paul. And we've reached that threshold where this pick and the burst damage it can provide alongside some stacks on that Charon's coin is going to be feeling good for the Tartarus Titans on this siege.
It just freaks me out, man, every time we get a look at Paul's player cam, because he's out here making phenomenal plays, literally changing the match inside the Pro League, and you would never know it if you just looked at his face. My man is calm, cool, and collected, and that's exactly what you need from your star player. Paul, now starting to work his way back forward to regroup with the rest of his team. The Titans likely going to go ahead and try and start their push on the left-hand side, work through these tier 2s. If they find a pick, work into the Phoenix. If they don't, just finish off all the rest of the towers. Pyromancer spawns as well. 1 minute on Gold Fury. There's so much gold on the map coming up, man. Tartarus Titans, they can play it slow and can establish themselves pretty easily a 15,000 gold lead without exposing themselves to any risk.
Paul finalizes his build with that Soul Reaver, so he thought he was doing some burst damage. Just going to get worse now for the Solar Scarabs. Inbound picks up the Bulwark of Hope, praying that he can survive and engage here underneath one of his Phoenixes. Layers is back, dealing with these Tiamat minions. So for the time being, 5 members of the Tartarus Titans on this side of the map, only 4 of the Solar Scarabs. And look at the reply, storming in to the mid lane here. Benji caught out just a bit, though. He's separate from the rest of his team. The transformation canceled out. Benji just a bit overextended. The Somersault Cloud will buy a little bit of time and buy his life. So maybe the Tartarus Titans overzealous. The solo laner at least was. Half HP on the Sun Wukong, but no ult.
Benji plays that so strange. Essentially just walks into the Phoenix, walks around, tries to get through the door, realizes that he can't just stand there and tank up the crit auto attacks from Heimdall.
I don't have the
Turns
keys.
into a cat to escape. It has to be a misclick, and then forced into the Somersault Cloud. Unfortunate situation that essentially wholesale stops the push from the Tartarus Titans. Had Benji played a little bit safer and slower, they could have kept up that push. They already had left side minion wave up, as well as the middle lane as well. Could have split it up, but instead the Tartarus Titan got to reset a little bit here, but still so much left on the map. 1 tier 2 tower still standing, 1 minute still on Fire Giant and Pyromancer between you and it. That's going to be a pretty large gold lead in favor of the Order Boys.
Well, Biff, I mean, you look at the scoreboard outside of the gold differential, and you're thinking that this game is close. I mean, it was in the kill department, right? I mean, the calls, the individual picks, back and forth all game long. It wasn't until Paul made a miraculous turnaround play that got the Titans in the lead in the kills department. But this gold lead has been steady 3,000 plus since the mid-game, the early mid-game, because the Titans have just been playing this map a little bit better. And now it's the Solar Scarabs not even wanting to deal with defending this tier 2 tower. Still a minute and a half remaining on this Fire Giant power play. Still some gold in hand for the Tartarus Titans, so you might not try to force the Phoenixes down just yet. There's going to be an Oni Fury in a little while to look at as well. Fire Giant will be up first. But it looks like, Myth, that the Titans are happy with taking the towers, backing away, and regrouping for the next FG.
Yeah, and I think that's the best call that they can make here. But there still is potential for the Solar Scarabs to work their way forward and maybe steal away the Fire Giant. Neither team really has great confirmation tools, so if Layers is feeling frisky, could just blink forward, try and burst it out with a Daji 1 auto 1, or maybe even have Baronic just test his dot damage up against what the Titans are able to put out there, but it's a long shot. When you're this far down, it's essentially a Hail Mary play anytime you step out of your own Phoenix line. But I think it's one that the Scarabs should be willing to make here. Their base defense isn't particularly strong, not weak by any means, but their draft might be favored inside the jungle fight more so than inside of their own base.
It might be difficult, though, when Paul is playing the way that he is. We talked about how high the Tiamat damage numbers could be, and they are here in this game. In about a 30-minute game, 20,000 damage for Paul, good for 3,000 higher than anyone else in the game, good for literally double his counterpart in the mid lane. Baronic has just not had the space or the targets to operate just yet here in this game. Been a lot of defensive flickers trying to avoid the front line and the onslaught from the Tartarus Titans. Fire Giant, seconds away from respawning here. Solar Scarabs are showing some face. Actives available for every single player in this game. First one gets used, and it's Blink from Aurora onto the backline. You think Baronic hasn't been able to play yet. This is why the Aegis, the Flicker, both used in Scary D will help finish off the first kill of the fight, and Benji gets rid of Baronic on the other side. The Tartarus Titans now chase down SOT, and it's all about picking up the scraps now. Tartarus Titans find 3.
They do, and they could find the Titan as well. Inbound, essentially wet paper right now. One more auto, gonna put him down. Cyclone Spin finds that one. Zapman going for the hero play, 1 versus 5. Best of luck, bud.
Yeah, Paul says no way. Rampaging is the Tiamat, and rampaging are the Tartarus Titans. It looks like 30 minutes in, with a little assist from the tanks, this game will come to a close around the FG. We wondered, Mifflin, if the Scarabs would show face. They did, but the engage too strong from the Titans, the damage too much from Paul. 5-1-4 will be the midliner's final KDA.
Man, I said that the Scarabs might step up to defend, but they stepped up so early. The Titans essentially just hold W key and spearhead their way through the front line of the Scarabs, picking up kills along the way. And it's all off the back of Paul's play. Paul's individual play around the Fire Giant about 10 minutes ago completely changes the face of that match. They were only looking at about a 4, maybe 5,000 gold lead at that point, and it started a balloon from then onward. Gotta control this, man. Paul has earned everyone's respect from his Worlds performance, but I think maybe people forgot a little bit because of this rough start from the Titans.
I think you could make the argument that the Scarabs were maybe feeling more in control. Again, maybe not in the gold department, but remember, they found 2 quick picks beneath their Tier 2 tower on the right-hand side, and then it's an overextension that then Paul turns around and the game just kind of loses all control for the Scarabs. Is that the moment in the game, you think, when things really shifted?
I think it's when the control of the match was firmly in the grasp of the Titans. Up until then, they still had a pretty gold lead. They were feeling pretty good going into all the objectives. But right then and there, that was the back-breaking moment. Just Batman over Bane's knee. Just a tough situation if you're a Solar Scarabs fan.
Yeah, and I guess like Batman, the Scarabs need to start doing some sit-ups or something. I guess that's what Batman did to help out his injured back. You got to do some calisthenics. Well, look, if you're a fan of the Tartarus Titans, we've seen plenty of those jerseys posted to Twitter, and all those fans got their jerseys from the Insight Apparel Company. shop.smiteproleague.com is where you want to go there. So the Tartarus Titans fans that have been showing us their jerseys all weekend long, feeling good after game number 1. And after game number 1, we'll take a break. We'll be right back with the desk before game 2.
Welcome back to the SBL powered by Alienware. I want to make sure that we do give them one more big shout out for helping making this season possible. If you want to help them out, give them a follow over on Twitter, Instagram, that's all at Alienware. Join into the community. Maybe see if you can even get over there and figure out some cool stuff that they have for you to pick up and maybe even give away. A lot of good stuff for you to be able to get a little bit better in your own gaming life. Now, we've had a big win there in that last one, aggro, from the Tartarus Titans, able to get stuff done. Maybe still a little teensy bit shaky from Scary, but no need to focus on that one. Paul and Cyclone Spin look so good out of the back line. Is that what did it for you, man? Paul and the Tiamat Cyclone Spin on this whole year? Maybe there was a little bit that you didn't get enough of on the other side.
No, it was Paul on Tiamat, man. I mean, that was the end-all, be-all of this game, in my opinion, is that Paul got Tiamat and hard carried the game come team fight stage. Just not enough pressure on him early on by the Solar Scarabs. Paul got to farm up until the pretty late game before he really was under any sort of pressure, and by that time, it was just too little, too late. This Dodge pick, again, did not do it for me. Layers really struggled to be impactful through that mid-game. This is the fight that Paul really popped off. And this is exactly what I'm talking about, that willingness to get in and not jump away. Don't jump away on this character the vast majority of the time. You have got to be willing to get your hands dirty, and Paul did exactly that. I know Cyclone gets the last hit, but it's Paul who made that fight work.
Yeah, and when you jump into the ground stance, I think you're getting her best ability, right? That big knock-up that really sets up for the squad. This last team fight, though, so critical for the Titans, where they were able to take care of Layers early on this one alongside Baronic and set up for basically the end on the back of this one. Things were still in the Titans' control. I think they were in a pretty good advantage state to win that game from that position, but Paul really kind of sealing the deal, so to speak, and making sure they close this one out. What's the prognosis, though? I like to say diagnosis is what went wrong. Prognosis is what we do about it here for the Soul of Scarabs in terms of Game 2. Is it a composition thing? I think the Dodgy pick made a ton of sense. Maybe that's not the problem. Where do you want to see this team go?
Ban Tiamat. Ban Tiamat.
That's a good start.
And then make sure that in case something goes wrong, you've got someone else ready to ban Tiamat. Because that was the whole problem for the composition, in my opinion. Obviously, the level 1 gank by Aurora on the solo lane, super smart. You know that he's going to start his 3. You know he's starting on blue alone. Doesn't matter if you have Invader's Curse or not. That guy's just dead to right. So I loved that innovation. I'm assuming that we'll see some ward coverage, better covering that area by the Solar Scarabs this time around. The Dodgy pick didn't really do it for me, but I just think that both jugglers really struggled in this game. Both backlines were able to make that work pretty well. Both front lines were pretty strong. I thought both Benji and Solar Troll had some good moments in that game. That whole game just looks so different, and Paul's on a different pick, man. And look, I don't fault the Scarabs for giving Tiamat to Paul. He hasn't played it quite yet. We haven't seen how good he's going to be on it. It's looked hot and cold on other players. I think it's not a cardinal sin to give it up. It would have been a cardinal sin to give it up again. They'd make the right call and ban it right away.
I like to see it, though. Inbound still active and talking in these picks and bans. I think that's one of Bobby's biggest strengths is his mental. This guy very much willing to come back in and give it another crack at 100%. A lot of our pros are. We don't have anybody that's out here giving up. But I think in particular, Inbound, one of those guys that's going to be loud and vocal, a part of your team, kind of keeping everything on track. As you said, though, Tiamat getting banned right away by the Scarabs, that's surprising. I would hope nobody out there after the performance Paul had. Morrigan, another Paul ban. He's one of our best Morrigan players we have. I think of maybe him and Ven and Zeros maybe next in terms of being able to elevate that pick, but in particular Paul, one of our elite on it. And then the Heimdall. These are essentially all backline bans from the Scarabs early on. Athena still avoiding a ban, but with the Titans focusing on Guardians, no surprise that comes through. Sobek, Amir, and Athena all taken away from Inbound.
That I was going to say, totally different from the Scarabs in Game 1. Game 1, the Scarabs banned 3 supports away from Aurora, basically. And now they banned 3 backliners away from the Titans. On her's open, I would expect that to get snap locked, and it does. Now it's a matter of, do you want to prioritize something for Aurora in this spot, or get something for your backline? They solidify their backline. It's Giannis for Paul, interestingly enough. That is not a typical Paul selection Normally, he sticks to his guns on the gods that he normally plays. This time, we get to see him play two gods we haven't seen from him in a long time. Tiamat, of course, for the first time. Giannis is one of those characters that when he looks good, he looks really good, but it's really easy to be invisible on this pick. How much can Paul be that team player on this selection is my question.
Right, Paul's usually the kind of guy that likes to get in there and get his hands dirty. As you said, he'll wait on the fringes, but usually picks kind of combative mages that can get in there and get stuff done. Giannis going to be really on the fringes, waiting on good moments, run stable vortex, and sending his team up with big portals. Let's see what Paul can do with it. Ares going to be on the other side. Wonderful to see some old school Carlos pull him through the portal plays on no escape.
Yep.
Perhaps that'll be what we see here. It's at least possible, and on her, obviously, one of the best ADCs you can get. Meanwhile, again, this Awilish pick coming out. We're seeing a bit more of her and Daji. Did these two guys kind of shake things up in scrims? A question you posed before, perhaps that is the case, as that lines up here with the Scarabs alongside the Jingwei. So already some good knock-up opportunity with the Riptide and Jingwei here for Awilish to have some decent plucks to try and pull some people out in that displacement, as it's Kakulin, Sun Wukong, Warriors Band, King Arthur, Raijin, and can't imagine this is going to legitimately be an Opwash pick here, right? I mean, no way.
No shot. No shot. No shot at all that's going to get locked in, no doubt in my mind. I do like the Awilish pick quite a bit, but this Ares pick for Aurora is just perfectly placed. I mean, Yamoja, no CC immunity. Awilish, no CC immunity. Awilish can't do any significant damage unless she gets those purification beads now, because that threat of just the regular chain would really end her capability in a team fight. But without Blink, she loses a lot of that initiation. So Layers is going to have a difficult game already just based on this signature pick for Aurora.
Finding some kind of way to get away from him. But if the setup is there, the payoff is there as well, isn't it? With this Ra now selected to go into Baronic's hands over on the side of the Scarabs. That gives him great sustain, great objective confirmation, which Giannis kind of can do with Through Space and Time, but Searing Pain gets there right away, guaranteed, and it's big damage all at once. And it's Herc on the other side that's going to be taken by SOT over into solo. He's going to be up against this Achilles. Herc's great strength is surviving at low HP. Is that going to work up against this Execute becomes the question. Any quick final thoughts here, Aggro?
Yeah, I think the Scarabs composition, it's high execution, and we haven't seen for that from them quite yet. That's a little bit concerning, but this is a team composition that snowballs very, very well. I don't love their fight come late game. Awilish is always fighting uphill when it comes to that. The key to me in this one, Paul on Giannis, Aurora on Ares. One of those picks, Paul on Giannis, unproven. The other, very proven in my mind, and Aurora on Ares. So those are the picks that I'm looking at here for the Titans.
They're going to have to be big, I think, here for this team. They're going to have a real impact as they close this one around. It's a double war, well, not double warrior with a Robin in there, but it feels almost like it with this frontline presence of Robin and Achilles kind of backing up these areas. They'll probably be diving together and trying to cause issues in the backline for this immobile mage in Ra. Now that I think about it, what does he do to get away from either of these guys? Is that even an option for Ra? Does he even think about escaping, or is he doing all his damage and just kind of waving goodbye like Terminator when he falls into the lava? Is that kind of the game plan then for him?
Yeah, it might have to be the case. I mean, Baronic, good luck, dude. I mean, on her is a pretty good matchup up against Ra. It isn't as bad as it used to be. Now that you get some slow immunity as you cast Divine Light, that second ability, you feel a lot better about that matchup because it used to be miserable once upon a time. But Paul just has this opportunity to drop ship people on top of you, as if that wasn't bad enough. With the mobility that Robin and Achilles have, they already had a pretty easy access to that backline. And like I said, there's not a lot of setup for Baronic, and even though you'd want setup for the long-range stuff, usually that setup can be used to peel whenever they close that gap and get close to you. Inbound's going to have to find some really, really solid Yamoja walls in order to set up and make sure that Baronic is not under siege too much. He's got to just be able to walk right through those Yamoja walls and get out, because there isn't a lot of leaping mobility that's going to chase him down. The Robin can, the Onher can, the rest of them need actual, well, Giannis needs the player wall in order to get it done, and Achilles would likely be blinking. It's going to be on inbound to keep Baronic safe, I think.
Yeah, so we're as you kind of alluded to, at the very least, get a rotation of those skills off then and try and keep them in this game. But clearly the Scarabs have a sustained draft here, right? Yamoja, Ra, and Hercules should be able to keep them standing up. We'll see if that'll be the case. We'll have to wait a little longer to see, though. Looks like the game needs to be remade. Don't worry, it'll be the same picks, and then we'll be able to get these teams back into the action. So give us a quick break while we work on that, then we'll be right back to see this exciting game too.
Feel this time choke my neck and I just wonder why I'm buried in a suit I'd never buy, a suit I'd never buy. Cufflinks.
Appreciate the patience, everybody. Game number 2 just around the corner from being kicked off here. Mifflin Dolson, hey, we'll still be on the cast for this one. Miff, slight changes in the duo lane here this time around. Cyclone Spin's not going to get the Ho Yi. It's going to be the On Her, and then Jingwei on the other side here for Zapman. What do you like here in this lane?
I feel like Cyclone Spin's going to be able to get involved a little bit earlier on. I think that the Tartarus Titans should be pretty much expecting dual lane pressure to be coming through from this Awilish jungle on the side of the Scarabs. So I'm glad that he is able to get a little bit more aggression for himself and some CC immunity inside the ultimate. But Anher's leap is going to leave him exposed to Gravity Surge, so we might not see that patented aggression that we expect from Anher, but I hope so, for at least the first 5 or so levels.
Well, no, look, I think an important thread to follow, if we're sticking with this dual lane, is inbound on this Yemoja as well. Something that we heard in an interview this week that really sticks with me is Yemoja's in such an interesting spot because some supports can, some supports can't, right? It almost seems like a yes-no type of thing here with this pick. What do you think about inbound? Do you think he can? Do you think he can? Or do you think you need to see this game and find out?
Well, going off of Season 7, which was a long time ago now, we're 5 months in to 2021, Inbound's Yemoja could have used some work, but he's had about a half a year since then to work on it, so we'll have to see whether or not he's capable of it in Season 8, but if I had a knee-jerk reaction, I would like to see him on someone that is a little bit more so inside his God pool.
Game number 2 starts right now. As I said, still Dolson, still Myth, still Doug. And one thing Aggro mentioned on the desk there, Myth, is the high execution comp that the Solar Scarabs are coming in here with. They got a Hercules for setup, Ironic needing some extra setup around that Raw, Inbound and Zapman as well, providing a little bit of that. Do you think that this team is really centered around setup for that Searing Pain to connect? Do you see that being a high kind of execution threshold type style that the Solar Scarabs need a little extra coordination to make work?
I think it's really down to the high execution that Aggro is alluding to is likely going to be inbound on this Yemoja, whether or not he's able to set up for his team throughout the early, and then layers on this Awilish. I happen to agree with Aggro for maybe the first time ever in my career. They need to pull a lead in the early, and this is one way to do it! Aurora falling low, but as is inbound. Only one of them benefits from healing, though.
That's right, inbound can sustain up here. Myth, I have heard you say Aggro said it perfectly on the cast at least 3 times.
Wasn't me. Must be confused.
So I'm, somebody else, right? It wasn't you. It was, I don't know, whatever rhymes with Mifflin is your evil twin that I was casting with. I'm not going to try here, but Inbound is able to sustain up throughout the initial onslaught of damage. Aurora reaches level 2 first, but Cyclone Spin, that means he's just a little bit behind here. If Inbound chains up some CC, things could get dangerous. Aurora chaining up Zapman, though. The knockups running wild here in this lane. The body box from Inbound just enough. You don't get to see this all that often, Miff, when the skirmishing, the dueling, the 2v2 really going hard for the kills.
Yeah, well, the 2v2 is going to need to go hard for the kills. If the Tartarus Titans can't finish them off, we're going to see exactly what we're seeing right now. Additional healing. Layers getting involved in mid. Could lose his life.
Portal! The portal! Scary D's got it all, Paul, on the Giannis. We didn't know how it would look. But I guess we get an idea now. The early start, and this is right what we wanted from the moment. Oh, he did it again from range. Scary D gets on in, gets himself a double, and the jungler starting to feel himself a bit.
Yeah, Baronic hangs out a little bit too long there. Maybe forgets that the Blink wasn't forced to be used from Scary D. Instead, still available. Easy to line up that kill. But I need to see more of that from the Scarabs going forward. They cannot lose their drive here. Aggro alluded to it on the desk, but I don't love how the Solar Scarabs are going to be able to play these late-game team fights. Instead, they need to utilize this early-game pressure largely around Layers and Inbound once this 3v3 starts to form up, or even inside the Soul lane. Have Layers rotate over and assist SOT. An Earthbreaker pull immediately into Gravity Surge should spell death even for Benji, as long as they're able to get there before he gets a ton of tankiness under his belt.
Inbound gets a back camp all to himself here just a moment ago. Purple buff up and spawned. Scary D, 2 kills in 1 level under his belt, feeling confident around this buff invade. Zapman has to dash away from Cyclone Spin, who tried to plug just a little extra damage out on this Jingwei. Aurora pulls out the buff. Attempted steal here from Inbound. Looks like actually might have gotten dropped down by Inbound if Zapman rotates around to pick it up. So Inbound, good play there on the Yemoja to save the buff.
It sure was. It does still strip away the farm from Zapman, who's not going to get any of that, all landing on the Yemoja there as Layers doing exactly what we were asking for, Dave, trying to find Benji in the jungle, but the pull is just off the mark, and that should dispel the end of the aggression from the Order side team over here. But keep this up, Layers. You gotta keep utilizing this aggression throughout the early, and then make use of these heals to control the neutral objectives. Gold Fury and Pyromancer should be under pressure from the Solar Scarabs throughout the entirety of this match.
Whoa. Paul doesn't have a lot of mana here. Does he have enough for a single portal? He has enough for the ultimate. That'll take him beneath the tier 1 tower. CC immunity paying off here for Paul. SOT now jumped on by Scary D. Third kill around the corner, third kill in his pocket. Killing spree. 3 and some change in for Scary D.
Scary D finally getting his feet under him inside that jungle role, playing that facilitator, almost tanky, warrior-esque style as Finch was highlighting on the desk. This Robin could be a good fit for him inside the SPL. Let's see some more of it as Aurora moving forward, and as is Cyclone.
Another engage over here in duo. Zapman a few charges away of that Desert Fury from dying. But now the Jingwei is going to have to sustain up thanks, or with the help, I should say, of the Emoja. Scary D off to a roaring start here. 3 kills, but Myth, they're all spread out. 1 on SOT, 1 on Layers, 1 Baronic, 1 on Baronic. And so this pressure has just been evenly spread from mid onto the right-hand side of this map. And this is what we wanted to see Layers do. Keep trying to find some of that engagement, but Benji feeling comfortable enough on this Achilles to absorb up that wave of farm. And so instead, Layers and SOT are going to look for the blue buff invade on the backside of the purple buff invade happening for the Tartarus Titans as well. And maybe this is the game plan for Layers. Let's keep putting pressure over here on the right.
If anyone on the side of Solar Scarabs even decides to show remote amounts of phase to defend this purple buff, you better believe the Tartarus Titans are going to jump on them instantly. Instead, the Scarabs, rightfully so, elect not to go for it, but an engage in the solo, and a gravity surge should confirm the kill.
And Layers grabs that one onto Benji, who tries to dash away, but no good. And Layers on the board now, both junglers putting pressure out all over this map. Cyclone Spin, a couple extra chunks of damage that he didn't expect. But it was about time, right, Mifflin? It had to happen at some point. Layers had spent so much time lurking around on this right-hand side. Eventually, Benji was going to get a bit too far forward. And now the Awelix on the board. Not 3 kills like Scary D has. And now Scary D looking to make it
Maybe
4
4.
as an airstrike away, followed up, but the gap closed not enough, and Scary D doesn't have the blink to further get in range of Zapman. But these junglers, they are putting pressure everywhere.
Yeah, Scary D blinked into lane once that airstrike was up into the air, tried to use the ultimate to chase that one out and could not quite get into range there. Unfortunate for the 3-0 jungler, but you can't feel too bad for him as Benji now struggling over in the soul lane.
What is that damage from SOT? That is warrior boots on this Hercules. I guess that's the kind of damage you got. 1 excavate on the back end of another volley of damage here from SOT might feel good. And so now both solo laners similar in the KDA department, similar equal the exact same, I guess, in this case. So SOT now back to a comfortable spot. Wonder how this transition starts to look, though, from Mifflin. I wonder how this transition starts to look, Hercules, from lane on over into that mid game.
Yeah, we want this Hercules getting involved as early as possible. Back in Season 7, when we were talking about Hercules as that premier top pick, you usually want him in that support role just because he has such a strong early game, able to rotate in and control the 3v3. We'll see if SOT tries to keep up that legacy out of solo this time around, but it's a blue buff invade attempt from the Solar Scarabs. Got to get in there and get involved early. If the Tartarus Titans confirm it, well, the fight's going to go their way as well.
This time inbound is here. It's a double pull from Aurora, though. And the River's Rebuke will delay any further engagement. Inbound burned away. The Riptide just as far as Scary D, who takes the portal, trying to read the escape, and he's done so. Inbound, down. Scary D, 4 kills. SOT,
nice!
Push. Baronic, big snipe, but Excavate, not enough to get it done. Scary D with the double. And now rampaging, 5 kills, excuse me, level 8, 7 minutes in.
Yeah, 100% kill participation and 100% of the kills as well. Baronic getting a little bit aggressive in mid. Can't really do much there, but a nice turnaround kill with that snipe to at least put himself slightly in the lead. Now but 1 level over Paul. And even though so far the Scarabs have been the root of all the aggression, it's been the Titans benefiting from these fights, I still think they have to go in aggressive. The Solar Scarabs cannot afford to let go of the gas pedal, or they're just going to become outscaled as the game goes on. So I like this continued aggression, and it continues in mid.
Whoa, Paul survives. Oh, that's devastating for the Scarabs, especially now that Scary D is going to get 2 more. My man's got 7 kills. 8 minutes into this game, it has been we're not mincing words here, Mifflin. It has been a tough transition for Scary D. I know these Titans players, they will defend Scary D to the ends of the earth. You know, Scary, it's not like he's fed his brains out, anything like that. We have not seen this from Scary D at all. This is a man possessed. His big brother just took over on the keyboard or something. My man on a warpath right now. 11 in the levels department over layers 8.
Look, I was a little bit glib on Twitter after Scary D's first week's performance in the SPL, joking that I was no longer the lowest KDA jungler in the SPL. And Scary D looking to clean it up, 7-0, maybe going for the 8th.
Benji steals it. KS, says Mifflin. Benji picks up his first kill of the game. Look, not for no reason. Going into this set, Scary D is 8, 20, and 12. He has 8 kills, 20 deaths, 12 assists. That's not a great KDA, right? So that's why we were waiting to see when this would start happening. Another kill over to Scary D. All right, Mifflin. So here's the big question: as Cyclone Spin gets one on the inbound, my God, this is all falling apart at the seams now. If you're the Solar Scarabs, this is where you get to see like real, true solo carry potential, right? You've got 8 kills, no deaths, and a 3-level lead over your counterpart. Every once in a while, you might see a level, a couple of kills, something like that, you know, in solo lane or in mid lane, even in the jungle. I couldn't tell you the last time I've seen an 8 or a 7-kill lead and a 4-level lead over the enemy jungler 9-10 minutes into the game. There's got to be some way to stop this guy, but I don't know if it happens anytime soon.
When's the last time we saw 8 kills in 9 minutes full stop? SOT in some trouble. Scary D looking to confirm it. Yeah, don't take this one, Benji. Oh, you scumbag. We're trying to get the Immortal rolling out early on. Look, the Tartarus Titans at this point, I think it's pretty fair to say, can do just about no wrong. I want to see them group it up on the Pyromancer. I want to see them go into the Gold Fury, take away this phase of the game where the Scarabs should be favored, but it is the Scarabs clearing out the Greater Scorpion on the Gold Fury side, but the more important objective, the Pyromancer itself, is getting started up by the Titans.
I mean, like, maybe there's a world where the Solar Scarabs do this. You send 3 or 4 on over to Duo.
Cyclone?
And Cyclone Spin will get pulled back. Zapman gets the kill. So Zapman a 1-level lead over Cyclone Spin. We're not going to compare that to the 3-level lead that still rings out in the jungle here. But maybe that's what you have to do here, Mifflin, if you're the Solar Scarabs. You have to send everyone somewhere to get a kill and hope that in the meantime the Tartarus Titans aren't getting an objective for free. I'll pause on my hand back because the Gold Fury now started by the Solar Scarabs. There is some confirm with Baronic. The Searing Pain in the backline layers through the portal, layers goes down. Divine is Scary D. It was a gutsy call there from the Scarabs to pull the Fury and the Titans column on it.
Unfortunately for the Scarabs, I think it's the right call. They have to go for these Hail Mary plays. They're falling behind that much. A lot of the times in pro comms, you say, how do we stem the bleeding? How do we get to the late game? How do we clean this up a little bit? I don't think you can stem the bleeding anymore. The arrow's been pulled out, it's just flowing freely, and the Scarabs have to pick up a transfusion somewhere along the way. This time around, it was called a Gold Fury, and unfortunately doesn't go to them, but they have to keep up this pace, because the later this game goes, the further out of their grasp it's going to fall. Even if they do, somehow, the Solar Scarabs that has dragged this match out to 40, 50, 60 minutes, where the gold means nothing and XP means even less than nothing, their team fight is still so objectively worse. They have to keep going for it now, Dave.
It's so far away. 50 minutes from now seems like an eternity for the Solar Scarabs to survive if they've died 12 times in 12 minutes. You know, we get surprised if we see 12 total kills in 12 minutes. 1 kill a minute is a fast-paced game, and that rarely all falls on one team to get it done on their own. Aurora, a bit overextended, but Scary D is here, and my man is searching for blood. Now it's Benji on the killing spree. If the Robin wasn't enough, now the Achilles has 3 straight kills here in this game, 4 assists. The right side of the map is desolate, in my mind, if you're the Solar Scarabs. No chance. I'm working over here. It's a beautiful play from SOT, but all you've done is pull the 3-level lead of Benji underneath your tower, and it is flashy, but unfortunately doesn't pay off.
Yeah, Benji gonna walk out of that one, having to use his beads though. So that is a decent trade for SOT. Now Benji could be exposed to another gank attempt, but 3-level lead is now 2 levels in the soul lane, but 3 levels over the jungler. I don't think that we're going to see Layers make an attempt on a Benji anytime soon. Instead, I think the only person we've seen bleed so far really has been Cyclone Spin. Maybe send your junglers over there, Solar Scarabs. Someone could go shut down this on her, potentially, and get yourselves back into this match.
What do you think the Titans are talking about right now? Like, hey guys, what do you want for dinner? Paul right now thinking to himself, maybe I want some Chipotle. He's vocalizing, maybe the burrito sounds good from Chipotle, and then in a moment we're going to see a roar. Yes, exactly, and he's thinking that instead the burrito bowl is the most likely outcome, and unfortunately for Zapman, the death might be the most likely outcome, but he's able to dash away, nearly Paul clipping Zapman with that through space and time. Inbound is going to extend this fight out a little bit further. This is a big-time brawl if the Solar Scarabs can find anything.
Okay.
And unfortunately, they have to retreat, but there's a little bit of sustain from Baronic out of the mid lane.
Okay.
SOT will survive for a little bit longer. No deaths for the Solar Scarabs. Big win now for the blue team.
Yeah, that is a marked improvement on the last 20 fights we've seen this game. The Solar Scarabs maintaining their lives, but Benji going in 1 versus 5!
Oh, Benji gets locked down. SOT takes out the Achilles, and the Solar Scarabs on the board once again. And Zapman feeling confident. In goes the Jingwei. Scary D maybe just baiting in the rest. Remember, it's a 9-0 Robin right now. Paul doesn't have any mana, but it looks like the Solar Scarabs, Mifflin, are happy. They survive, they get themselves a pick, and little by little, that's their way back in.
Yeah, the Solar Scarabs are literally counting their blessings right now that the fight pans out that way, but it's going to take a lot more of those for them to be able to turn this one around. The Solar Scarabs essentially completely out of the driver's seat at this point, but with their draft, they are forced to maintain that driver's position. They have to continually look for aggression on the map. Maybe go to the Pyromancer, go to the Gold Tree, try and split off of wherever the Titans aren't. If the Titans go to Gold, you should be on the right-hand side. If they're on the right-hand side, go to the left, all right? That's really the path of least resistance for the Solar Scarabs going forward. But it's got to feel like the game is still slipping out of their hands. So maybe we should just talk about what the Titans should do. More of what they've been doing, I suppose, is really as far as the analysis can go.
Yeah, copy and paste the first 15 minutes of this game. Well, rewind like a minute where they lost a pick.
Yeah, before Benji.
Right, before they lost a pick there, let's rewind the clock to that and then copy and paste throughout the rest of this game. Things have been delayed. Look, Mifflin, if you're in a position where you need to delay the game and delay fights, you're going to want some sustain. You've got Ra, and you've got a Yamoja. That is one way to keep yourself in these fights. And right now, Benji being targeted out by SOT and Layers. Benji uses the Fatal Strike to survive, but inbound, beautiful Riptide back in. And now Benji dies a few times in a row after getting himself a killing spree, and Solar Scarabs on the hunt for just a little bit more.
Yeah, the Scarabs also looking for the Pyromancer. This is a slow turnaround for the Order side team. What was a 5,000 gold lead is a Hail Mary attempt at the Fire Giant. We've been calling for it the whole time. They have to.
And they're doing it so fast, it's down to half HP now. The Tartarus Titans, they're slow on the reply. It's a Roar who's forced into the Fire Giant pit. I'm not sure he can try to pull somebody. Fire Giant low. Scary D around the backside. Solar
They got it!
Get the objective now to push back. SOT gets the kill. On to Scary D. Searing Pain from Baronic. Flies through, but the health bar is middling at best now for the Tartarus Titans. Paul chasing down Zapman in the backline, and it's another big push. Solar Scarabs, Mifflin, they're doing it. They got the pull back onto a Roar, and they'll find another kill.
Fire Giant on 4 members, 3 dead for 30 seconds on the side of the Titans. The entire gold lead is gone at this point. Only 1,000 in favor of the Chaos team. What a phenomenal swing from the Order side. I can see the chat right now. That's why you never F6 your games, but don't expect this miraculous level of play every single time. Where can the Scarabs go from here to further push out their lead? Get to that Gold Fury right now. It's the only spot to go.
You have to quantify it, right? Benji was 3 levels up, now down 1. Scary D was 4 levels up, now only up 1. Paul was a little bit further ahead, now only up 2. This gap has closed. Zapman is 2 levels up over his counterpart. Solo or Troll survives, and he's able to walk away. We can't scoff at this, Mifflin. It's still, what, a 9-1 Scary D, but look at the charts. There's a gold lead.
Life comes at you fast.
They're down 14-8 in kills, and there's a gold lead for the Solar Scarabs. What is happening right now in this game? Never count these boys out because this game is right back to dead even. And maybe you just buy some time here, catch your breath on this siege, try to pull some gold out as best as you can if you're the Scarabs.
Look, all hope is not lost if you are a Titans fan. We are slowly approaching that point of the game where their draft should just have an advantage inside the team fight phase. But so far, I gotta highlight the player that's been doing it all for them. The Solar Scarabs riding on the shoulders of Solo Troll, who is essentially, it's not even flashy plays that's turning it around. It's him walking in and utilizing his bulky build to just survive these dives from the Titans, pulling them out of position and setting up for the rest of his team. A lot of these fights coming off the back of SOT walking forward, dropping down to 10%, healing back up, and then finding a punch. Cyclone Spin so far forward here, you gotta imagine the Scarabs want to look for that one, but instead it's a counter rotation from the Titans.
Inbound drops down, the River's Rebuke, and suddenly this game has gotten a lot more serious. We were talking about Chipotle just a few moments ago, and now the egg's on our face as the Solar Scarabs. Look, there's no world where you tell me that moments after that, the Solar Scarabs get a pick, take the FG, win the fight afterwards, and are now in the lead in this game. I can't believe it, but the Solar Scarabs show us resilience. If you're just now joining us, 9-1-4 is Scary D, and all of that happened in like the first 10 minutes of the game. And the Scarabs on a miraculous turnaround have now taken the Fire Giant. They've taken a fight, but the Tartarus Titans not happy with that. The onslaught begins. Zapman has to use the airstrike out and away from Aurora, who had connected with a couple of chains there. Up, down from the 9-1. Scary D as Inbound tries to dodge somehow, but he will not survive this fight. Layers rejoins the fray, and in the backline, SOT will do that as well. Aurora only pulls back one Mifflin as Zapman continues to whittle away the health bars.
But SOT still draws breath, and he's looking for the pull. He finds a roar, but a stun stops the driving strike just for a moment.
And on the back pedal now are the Solar Scarabs. All of these fights hanging on a knife edge. Layers, look at him back at base, now rotating to the right-hand side of the map. All is done over here on the left. And it's Baronic who goes down. And finally, Mifflin, it's Scary D. I can't believe I'm saying finally Scary D, but finally it's Scary D who in the last few minutes found an opening, utilize some of that level advantage, and help his team out to the tune of a kill.
Yeah, some of that level advantage is the correct nomenclature. That's just one level, was 4. Now it's none, by the way.
Gone.
Both junglers level 18 going forward, but the Tartarus Titans do have a distinct advantage despite all of that. Maybe not as distinct an advantage as it was just even 4 minutes ago, but they are at least able to stop the push from the Solar Scarabs. I think the Scarabs have to keep doing what they did to get here. They have to keep face rolling. They gotta keep W-keying at the Pyromancer and the Fire Giant. They cannot let go of this pace, because I am still concerned, and I share this concern with Aggro from the desk, that this Tartarus Titans draft is just gonna outscale in the next couple of minutes.
Yeah, but Aggro's never been right once, not ever, right? So just
well, this is the first time. I said that earlier.
Right, right. Oh, so it's the same point, just reiterated here later. I got it.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
So the first time he's been right still counts on to this point. We can breathe now for a second here, Mifflin. Fire Giant buff has fallen off, but Fire Giant back and respawning. It'll be the second Fire Giant of the game here, 22 minutes in. Paul going pretty standard as far as what we've seen with the Giannis builds up to this point. Burst with the Soul Gem and then Staff of Mirrodin to double follow up on the back end of that. It almost feels, doesn't it, like if Baronic is able to get a big Searing Pain off, or Paul finds that opening shotgun blast of damage from the through space and time, that'll maybe be the biggest differentiator.
Has Paul landed a big through space and time yet, by the way? I mean, if we get to compare Paul to the rest of the league here on this Giannis, this is not particularly in his god pool, I'd say, so far. Ben and Herwin having a slightly better performance on it throughout the week so far, but Paul certainly can turn it around. 0-7 is the mid laner for the Tartarus Titans, and the Tartarus Titans are taking the aggressive path. This time, they're not going to allow the Fire Giant to go down for free. Instead, they want to be the aggressors. They think that this is their point of the game to look forward to, and I have to agree with them. If they're able to start these fights off on their own footing, I have to imagine the Solar Scarabs should fold beneath their weight.
Well, it's the Fury that is just now back and respawning on the left side. Oni Fury this time. Zapman steals the way and picks up the red buff. Zapman whittling away
Good Lord.
the damage on his world's teammate Paul. And Paul will survive, but plenty of damage coming out from this Jingwei. Remember, Zapman's held a steady lead over Cyclone Spin this entire game. 3 levels now for the Solar Scarabs Hunter. Solar Scarabs onto the Oni Fury. Tartarus Titan slow on the reply. And now a big objective over to the Scarabs as they search for kills.
The Scarabs feel like they have all the momentum. Benji forced to use the ultimate defensively, and I believe the blink as well. That is a huge loss for the Tartarus Titans. I think the Scarabs go back to base, reset, walk at the Fire Giant. Somehow, when they were down 10,000 experience and 8,000 gold, they were able to pull the Fire Giant and win a fight like that. It must be way easier from 2,000 in the lead. Gotta imagine they're looking for this biggest of neutral objectives. SOT playing goalkeeper. Anyone gets pulled in should result in a kill. Cyclone Spin spots him out in a ward, and it seems like the Titans are hesitant to step forward. This pace is insane, Dave. It's completely different from what we saw just 10 minutes ago.
Well, I got a big, dumb smile on my face right now with the way that this game is turned around. Big wave pushing down the left side of the map. Oni wave there to support the Solar Scarabs on the left side. And the Tartarus Titans lurking here. The Fire Giant yet again burning quickly. Benji trying to close the gap, looking for the steal, but no good. Solar Scarabs take the second FG of the game. And now the fight afterwards rages on.
Scary.
With a big rotation around the backside. Baronic and Zapman none the wiser. Pull back in onto Aurora. First kill
my God.
over to the Solar Scarabs. Benji running away, but there is no fight to be had. The Scarabs get the FG, and they get the pick.
SOT just barely off the mark with the pluck for his team, but Fire Giant on 5, Aurora dead for 30. Gotta think they can move in towards these towers. I think it's a power play for the Solar Scarabs. Don't even work through the tier 2s. Move into the Phoenix now or utilize the split push. It's a 3-2 for now, and Paul still yet to go back to base. This is a huge up play for the Solar Scarabs. Keep going, work your way in. You still got 10 seconds left on Aurora.
I was wondering if Scary D was going to get a massive gank off in that previous
50%.
fight. Nowhere to be found. Half HP now. Onto the Phoenix. Zapman half HP as well. Dodges out a lot of the damage from Cyclone Spin.
Paul?
This SOT has pulled Cyclone back in. Layers off to the left. He'll dash away, but Scary D up, down. Jungle battle we have outside of the base, and Scary D wins this one. Zapman on the airstrike.
Phoenix.
Out and away from the Phoenix, but the Phoenix has died in the meantime. Zapman gets pulled back in. It's massive from Aurora, and then a big stun from Benji on the other side gives the Titans the legging they need here in this fight as SOT picks up the scraps.
SOT still full HP, doing it all for his team. 2 dead on the side of the Scarabs, and the Titans are looking to exploit it. Paul pulled in, and still no damage output from the Titans.
Baronic needs some healing here, but he won't get it. Now it's SOT in inbound, and there's just too much damage now still in this fight from the Tartarus Titans. SOT in inbound, they have to leave. You've gotten the right side Phoenix, but at what cost? You've gotten a kill onto Scary D. You might get decided. No stun onto inbound, but Mifflin, this is going to be a slow, long chase onto the tankiest members of the Scarabs.
All inbound has to do is buy a little bit of time, and I think he's already done enough. The Tartarus Titans will not have an opportunity to push in here. 5 seconds left on Layers, 10 seconds left on Zapman, and all the waves pushed up. Again, the Solar Scarabs reach into the Magician's hat and pull out a miraculous play. Fire Giant goes their way, and the right Phoenix does the same. But can they continue this push? I think that the Scarabs going to play it a little bit slow until this Fire Giant respawns.
I mean, the Scarabs have now gotten cleanly 2 FGs here in this game, one on the back end of a pick, so you can maybe understand the non-immediate answer there from the Titans. But that second one, the Scarabs pulled, and the Titans a bit slow on the trigger pull there to try to jump in and try to steal things away, it sort of seemed like. So this next FG, Mifflin, we're starting to reach a point where, yeah, Scary D is 11-2-5. And that is an incredible KDA, don't get me wrong, but he's now equal levels with Layers, excuse me, on the other side. Layers has finalized his build. Scary D's build a little bit more expensive, to be fair, but Layers has all of the items in slot and an upgraded starter item. I think we've reached the point now where 19-10 down in kills. The Solar Scarabs are feeling comfortable, maybe even far and away ahead here of this game. It's a back away now as the minute or the last 45 or so seconds tick away from this Fire Giant buff as the Primal Fury gets ready to respawn. It's going to be telling moments here, Mifflin, if the Tartarus Titans feel comfortable enough to step out and defend.
W key? Benji pulled in. Oh, they do step out to defend and lose out on their beads immediately. Despite having half the kills of the Tartarus Titans, it feels like the Solar Scarabs have all the momentum. Despite having a slightly less favored late game team composition, don't you sense fear from the Chaos team? They are hesitant in stepping forward.
Solo or Troll eats just a little bit of damage here. Fury not respawn just yet. This has been the MO. Send SOT and inbound forward, leave Zapman to burn away the objective, and it's exactly what's going to happen yet again. The Titans leave. Instead, they're just going to farm up the minions. As the fire minions have reached the Titan of the Tartarus Titans, a little bit of damage will ring through there, but it'll buy enough space for the Solar Scarabs to grab the objective, group up around this Tier 2 tower.
And expose the last Phoenix of the Tartarus Titans. Expect them to finish this one up and then immediately reset and go back to their home, the Fire Giant, where they first started this comeback and where every single fight has gone their way since. That is the Solar Scarabs' home court advantage, but the Tartarus Titans should be able to put up a defense here. Only the right side Phoenix down for them means that's the easiest waves to deal with. Once you do start to move into the Fire Giant, have to worry about that dance itself. I expect to see the Solar Scarabs do exactly what they have been, which is Hail Mary, pull the Fire Giant with complete disregard for their surroundings. It still is because of how they've been doing it, Dave. They just go in and they pull it. They don't even look at the Tartarus Titans. They say, look, we're going to confirm it over you, and they just have, and then somehow they win the team fight off of all their healing afterward. Keep it up, Scarabs. I'm loving every second of it.
Yeah, you have to. You only get this type of action in the SPL, sponsored, of course, by Alienware, and the Solar Scarabs now setting up a ring of defense around this Fire Giant. One more wave of fire minions on the right-hand side as the Phoenix is back and respawned. Pyromancer now taken. SOT looking for a pullback. The Hercules, what a turnaround that one's had here in this game. So, far behind because of Scary D in the early game, and Solo or Troll has pulled this game back for the rest of his team with the rest of his team. This has been a group effort from everybody now on the Solar Scarabs. Inbound a bit caught out. It's a Rivers rebuke as Benji finds Satman in the back. Uh-oh, the Jingwei feeling a little bit nervous. Aegis gets used here, and same with the airstrike, but Aurora with the chains cleans up the kill, but Layers is sold out. Cyclone Spin on the other side. No Hunters in this fight. Searing Ping flies through from Baronic as Benji looking to get some cleave damage out on 3 members of the Solar Scarabs. SOT now tries to close the gap, assists the backline. Scary D has found the backline of the Solar Scarabs, but Layers will escape with an inch of his life, but it's a big pull now. Does Layers have a chance? No, he doesn't. Aurora has 2 kills in this fight. The Tartarus Titans come surging back.
Finally able to split up this engagement for the Solar Scarabs. Inbound caught out initially and forces his team to split up. Zapman left high and dry results in a lost engagement. 4 dead on the side of the Scarabs, but only 1 still standing, and it's the hero. Can he tie up his cape and keep the game alive for just a moment longer? He's so tanky.
Zapman, he'll respawn here in 10
Is
seconds.
it winning
SOT might actually get the kill on the Scary D. Beads get used, and SOT will burn away slowly here, and it's Benji now back on a killing spree. And a deicide for the Tartarus Titans 30 minutes in. How many times do you think the Titans have canceled, uncanceled, and cancel again their Chipotle DoorDash orders since we brought that one up? They're feeling maybe more comfortable here, Mifflin, than they have throughout the rest of this game. Fire Giant still stands. There's still 5 at least seconds on respawns. You imagine this is an FG pull for the Titans.
It has to be. They've got time to work with Layers and Zapman hovering around. Enhanced Fire Giant 31 minutes into the game, and it seems like it's going to be a split push instead. Zapman knows better than to step up into the territory of the Tartarus Titans. Enhanced Fire Giant finally going the way of the Chaos team, and the gold lead starting to eke slowly back into their favor as well. What was 5,000 just a moment ago in favor of the Scarabs is now closer to 2. But Paul has been struggling with Zapman all game!
Wow, Zapman has gone in 3 separate times! He keeps going in, and now he's all sorts of caught out here as Cyclone Spin grabs the kill. Zapman thought he could get one onto Paul, but instead the Tartarus Titans get one onto Zapman. And Mifflin, that is a long death timer with Enhanced Fire Giant.
It sure is. You might as well ignore those Tier 2 towers on the left-hand side. The Tartarus Titans, with 50 seconds to spare, should be barreling down the Titan right now. With Enhanced Fire Giant, they don't even need the waves. Backdoor protections removed. Walk in, take the fight. This is a good opportunity for the Chaos team.
Solar Scarabs, you have done it once. You need to do it again. 30 seconds on Zapman. mid lane Phoenix being walked at now by the Tartarus Titans. You have to imagine they're looking for an end here. They want out of this game. They want out of this set. It's been a headache for the Titans. Inbound dodging out some of the engage. SOT doing the same. Mid lane Phoenix is down, and the Titans do not call for end. Instead, they'll back away, and they'll get another tier 2 tower and right.
Scarabs play that intelligently. Had they put up any form of defense, had they lost out on any of their lives, they likely lose the Titan as well. The Tartarus Titans think better of it, all right? No one stepped forward. Zapman's respawning. Let's not throw this one away. We've seen the Scarabs win from crazier stances, from crazier positions in this match alone. Instead, let's cross our T's and dot our I's. The Tartarus Titans strip away yet again another tier 2 tower. 2 still standing on the side of the Solar Scarabs, likely going to be the target of the Tartarus Titans' ire. Oni Fury going to get picked up as well to split up the map with those enhanced minion waves, and the Chaos team has all the chips.
Sure do. One more chip added to their stack, and it's a big one. The Oni Fury gets taken away. So now mid lane will have the Oni Fire minions. So, if you're the Solar Scarabs, at least it's a lane that you can rotate in and out of closer to the opposite sides of the map, I guess. But it's just been a bit slower, Mifflin, hasn't it? Where the Tartarus Titans, when this game got out of control, the Solar Scarabs were staying alive in those fights. So much sustain was feeling good. A late Pestilence here for Benji maybe starting to make just a little bit of a difference. But now you are starting to see what looks like a 25-11 kill game. Still a chance for the Solar Scarabs to defend, but these last few fights have just not looked good.
Isn't this the ugliest 25-11 kill game you've ever seen, Dave? If you just look at the slash line, isolate the top of your screen, and ignore the last 33 minutes, it seems like the Titans should have been able to run away with it handily by this point. Right. But instead, the Solar Scarabs, through insurmountable odds, have been able to put up defense time and time again. And, defense might be the wrong word. Miraculous offense is what's kept them in this match so far. But now, with Fire Giant on 5 members of the Titans, they can no longer be the aggressors. Instead, for the first time this match, 35 minutes in, the Solar Scarabs are put in a defensive state, and they have the tools to do it. Ra is fantastic at keeping waves out of your Phoenix. SOT has been playing out of his mind to displace the opposition. It is gonna be hard, but they can absolutely fight in.
Baronic needs some room to operate here in these fights. Searing Pain flies through. Big damage ability now down for the Solar Scarabs. Inbound early on the River's Rebuke. 3 ultimates missing from the Solar Scarabs. Only 1 down for the Tartarus Titans. And in surges the Chaos team as the left side Phoenix falls. Fire minions falling in place in the mid lane as well. It's a right side Phoenix now exposed. The Titans can take that with ease should they please.
10 seconds left on the enhanced Fire Giant. They're going to have to do it quickly or collect the wave if they don't want to deal with this backdoor protections. The Solar Scarabs are trying to bring the fight in now.
Oh my god, Paul with a massive through space and time deletes Baronic from the map. This is the fight that the Titans have been looking for. It's a long time coming, but it looks like the Titans may have the legs to win this game. Instead, Layers gets a kill over on the Cyclone Spin. SOT melting away the health bars as well. Zapman dealing with the fire minions, and it's going to all be down to Zapman at the end of the day. The Tartarus Titans in 35 minutes turn around, unturn around, and then turn the game right back around, and game 2 will go to them.
Talk about a game of throws, badminton, tennis, volleyball, whatever, where you toss it back and forth, Dave. That was a treat to watch, but not necessarily the cleanest Smite game I've ever seen. But look, the Scarabs, they hang in despite all odds for longer than I think anyone thought they should have. They should be commended for their efforts, but this time it's the Titans finding their first win in the SPL.
And the Titans needed it, didn't they? I'm sure. And we'll get a post-game interview, and I'll be sure to ask, what the emotions are like in a game like that. This is a team of veteran players that I'm sure isn't happy with the way that game went. You and I don't think unjustly are kind of joking around about this game 15 minutes in. You think it's going to snowball out of control, and then maybe some missed calls or some good calls by the Scarabs keep them in it. So it's not clean, but it's a sign of improvement here from this Titans team.
It really is, man. A sign of improvement in particular for Scary D, who I think found a god that fits his playstyle and gets involved early on and incredibly loudly throughout the entire this match. I didn't get to catch a glimpse of how he ended out that match as KDA, but at one point was 8-0 for his team, had 100% kill participation going forward. Scary D finally starting to look like a jungler here.
Well, look, anything is going to be slower than an 8-0 start. Right? It had to slow down at some point. but slowing down because the Scarabs surge back into that game is probably not what the Titans had in their card. Hey, I mentioned it in game. You get this type of action only in the SPL sponsored by Alienware. Once again, shout outs to our friends at Alienware to sponsoring this season here in the SPL. Make sure to use code SMITEAW. I got to get the sides of my screen right here at smitegame.com/Alienware. You can follow Alienware on all their socials at Alienware. That's Twitter and Instagram, and then Alienware Arena for giveaways and all that sort of fun stuff. What a game. Game number 2 was here between the Titans and the Scarabs. We'll take a break, then the desk will round out the day.
Well, the Titans certainly earned their Chipotle in that one. If you at home plan on grabbing some Chipotle, make sure you wait on getting your jersey via Insight Apparel. You don't want to spill Pico de Gallo all over your brand new Titans jersey. Head to shop.smiteproleague.com. That'll come in the mail. You'll eat in peace, and then once it arrives, make sure you keep that thing clean. You want to rep your boys in style. Now, Agar, I certainly said they earned maybe their dinner there tonight. Is that how you would find yourself describing it? Because this was a tough one. The desk, as they or the caster, they said, maybe not the cleanest game of Smite they've ever seen. That's certainly true. But in the end, a win's a win. Though maybe I give you your soapbox to provide your critique.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the deal. If you're a Titans fan, the best thing that could have happened to you is that you didn't watch this game, and that you just looked and went, "Oh, we won 2-0. That's great. The team is back on track." Holy John Finch. I mean, look, the game was over at 8 minutes, right? Like, if Scary D has 9 kills in 9 minutes, this game should be over. And it should have been. And then Benji and Cyclone Spin just kept giving kills over to the Solar Scarabs. Cyclone defends an indefensible purple and gives up pressure, and that lets Zap start to get a lead. And then the Scarabs start to play well around it. You got to give a lot of credit where it's due to the Scarabs. This team did not tilt. They did not give up. They played really, really well around these objectives. They took their calculated risks. They understood their outs. They did all of those things really well. But let's be clear with one another here. The only reason that any of those things work is because the Titans made enough mistakes to let it work. So that's where the discussion has to be. Again, not to take any credit away from the Scarabs. I'm impressed with a lot of the things they did in this game. I don't know. I mean, we should have been coming out of this thinking, oh, man, what a great win for the Titans to find their first set victory. That Scary D had a huge carry performance, and he did. Monster. He played clean from minute 1 all the way until the end. He made a lot of really great plays. But this Titans team clearly still lacking discipline, lacking direction. They won today, but I can't imagine it's the best they've ever felt after a dub.
Yeah, it kind of felt like the Titans should have been able to just kneel until the clock ran out, right? They didn't even need to run any more plays, and yet somehow they fumbled the ball. The Scarabs grabbed it and had a chance to close this one out. I think there was still a little bit of bag fumbling from the Scarabs as well, but can you even call it that? If truly they ran out of lives 20 minutes before this game ended, right? They were on borrowed time, house money, whatever analogy you need to use, and had a chance to extend this set out. They legitimately did. I think you can raise some questions about that Zap play where he's kind of way on the other side of the map diving Baronic. Maybe he's a hero if he gets that kill, but I think he's likely dead to rights there either. But again, that's all only because they were gifted a chance to even had a chance to win that game there in the end, right? They really shouldn't have even been there if the Titans were able to close that one out the way they should.
Yeah, exactly. But look, at the end of the day, a win is a win. I'm sure that the Titans, maybe not the best they've ever felt after a win, but they do get the win, and that's what's important. So at the very least, they can go to bed knowing that they found their first win in the SPL in Season 8.
Yeah, and even if it's not Chipotle, I think you're getting Scary D a couple of rounds or something like that tonight, right? My man popped off there in Game 2, and I think they are deserve to give my man a little gas. Dolson knows the one standing by. It's Paul for the post-game interview.
That's right. We'll give Scary D a little bit of a break. Paul, congrats on your first win of the SPL here in Season 8. Look, unfortunately, Game 1 was kind of so fast and clean for you guys. We kind of need to move past it and talk about what happened there in Game number 2. Ultimately, is that you're happy to win, right? Because it's a win nonetheless. But what are kind of the feelings of the team leaving there after Game 2?
Well, we're happy to get our first win, but it was really sloppy. So we're just like talking about the game and stuff afterwards, and we're still trying to improve. But I mean, we're still happy to win, right? Yes,
absolutely. Nobody can take that away. You got yourselves a win. That's what is the most important. And to shine a great light here, this is the best, maybe jungle performance we've seen this year, but absolutely best performance from Scary D specifically. I think 12-2 and 12 is where he ended up. Did it only feel like a matter of time before some of those results started to show in an SPL match?
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's improving pretty well. Like in the mid that game too, we kind of just like smashed them, and he got a couple of kills, and we started snowballing. It was but overall, I mean, I think he's getting better. I think he'd be a top jungler.
Yeah, look, I forgot who it was. We interviewed someone on your team, and they said something very similar. That by the end of the year, Scary D could be one of the best, if not the best, junglers in the league. So high praise there. Looking at your god pool a little bit, you got your hands on the Tiamat and the Giannis here in this set. Do we expect more Giannis from you in the future? Are you feeling comfortable on those picks?
Yeah, they made us to like a football field. It's like you can't miss it now, so probably gonna be playing that god more.
Hey, fair enough. Well, Paul, congrats again. First win of the year here in the SPL Season 8. We'll see you guys next weekend against the Valhalla Valkyries. So rest up, get some prep for that game, and we'll see you back here shortly. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Well, Paul, and I think that team trusting in Scary D to eventually show us that kind of performance, maybe not every game, but something close to it on a pretty consistent basis. Let's go ahead and take a look at how all the teams end up as a result of the games that we have seen here today. Our updated standings here for you. The Titans now able to find themselves a win. No winless teams left in the SPL now. Everyone's got it done, and now the 5, 6, 7, and 8 teams all clumped up together. Really still not that far from catching up. I mean, you're 4th place with a 2nd win here at this point. It's just way up where it's top-heavy. Everyone else at the bottom, though, trying to find some consistency, and I think they will. It's a long Season 8 and plenty of time for these teams to start hitting their groove.
Absolutely. I mean, a bit of a traffic jam at the bottom right now, but it won't take long for that to clear. These teams are going to start to figure it out. Teams like the Titans and the Scarabs both showed a decent amount today that makes me hopeful and a little worried about the future at the same time. And that's where all the fun is, right? Having that tension there.
Exactly. Which one will we get? So we just wrapped up our last game today, a 2-0 win for the Titans. It's been a 2-0 win for everyone, as Dave pointed out on the desk before this one. We've still got some great games tomorrow. We'll get to see if the Warriors can bounce back and if the Leviathans can bounce back. Plus, we get to see if the Scarabs can capture some momentum up against the Kings team that seems to be getting better every single week, which is truly a frightening prospect for the rest of the SPL. Once those guys are here, you have to mark them on your calendar because I think the Kings are going to be a tough squad to beat. So still plenty of SPL action tomorrow and SCC action. Remember, at 11 a.m., we handle the remaining SCC game for this week and then right into the SPL at 1 with those 2 great sets that you know you're going to be watching. And remember, we're able to bring all this to you thanks to Alienware, who powers the SPL this year. So thank you all so much for watching. The rest of the Catholic team production, thank you all for making this happen. We will be back tomorrow. Use code SMITE8W if you want to get on to smitegame.com/Alienware and pick up some sick gear, because I know that you all out there want to. We'll see you tomorrow, though. Make sure you're back for SCC at 11 a.m. Eastern.
Peach it.